Have you ever been looked at like you didn't belong? Like you were dirt on the bottom of someone's shoe just because of the color of your skin or the hoodie on your back? Imagine holding a valid first-class ticket, paid for with your own family's hard work, only to have a gate agent rip it up in your face and call security. That is exactly what happened to Mia and Maya at JFK International Airport. But that gate agent made one fatal mistake. She didn't know whose daughters she was messing with. She didn't know that one phone call, just one, wouldn't just stop the plane. It would shut down the entire terminal. This is the story of the ultimate karma. The automatic sliding doors of JFK Terminal 4 hissed open, letting in a gust of biting November wind. But for Mia and Maya Sterling, the cold was the last thing on their minds. Today was supposed to be the start of the rest of their lives. It was their 22nd birthday, a milestone their father, Mason Sterling, had promised to celebrate in a way they would never forget. "Zurich, baby," Maya whispered, adjusting the strap of her worn, vintage canvas backpack. She pulled her oversized grey hoodie tighter around herself. Swiss chocolate, the Alps, and zero drama for 7 whole days. Maya, the quieter of the identical twins, smiled, though she looked nervously at the chaotic swirl of travelers rushing toward the check-in counters. She wore a matching hoodie in navy blue and sweatpants that looked comfortable but certainly didn't scream wealth. "Let's just get through security first, Mia. You know how I get with crowds." To the untrained eye, the Sterling twins looked like 2 college students scraping by. They wore no jewelry. Their luggage consisted of 2 beaten-up duffel bags. They had no designer logos plastered on their chests. They were black women in a predominantly white, upscale space, dressed for comfort, not for show. What nobody in that terminal knew was that the worn backpack was a limited edition vintage piece worth $3,000, and the simple sweatpants were cashmere blends from a boutique in Milan. And more importantly, the credit card tucked into Maya's pocket carried a limit higher than the annual salary of the pilots flying the planes. They approached the counter for Royal Horizon Airlines, one of the most prestigious carriers in the world. The economy line snaked back and forth, a river of exhausted travelers. But Mia didn't head for the snake. She banked left, heading toward the crimson carpet marked with gold stanchions, first class, priority access. "Mia," Maya hissed, grabbing her sister's elbow. "Are you sure? We look like, well, we don't look like them." She gestured to a couple ahead of them, a man in a bespoke Italian suit and a woman dripping in pearls. "Dad booked first class, Maya. We stand in the first class line. Stop shrinking yourself," Mia said, her voice firm but loving. She grabbed her sister's hand and marched onto the red carpet. Almost immediately, the atmosphere shifted. The air seemed to thin. Heads turned. The man in the Italian suit looked over his shoulder, his eyes scanning them from their sneakers to their natural curls, his lip curling in a faint, instinctive sneer. He pulled his designer luggage slightly closer to his leg, as if they might snatch it. Maya ignored him, keeping her chin high. They reached the front of the line. Behind the podium stood Brianna. Brianna Miller was the kind of gate agent who wore her authority like a weapon. She was in her late 40s, with stiff, bleached blonde hair sprayed into a helmet of perfection, and a Royal Horizon scarf tied aggressively tight around her neck. Her name tag gleamed under the fluorescent lights, but her eyes were dull, cold beads that narrowed the moment they landed on the twins. "Can I help you?" Brianna asked. She didn't smile. She didn't use the standard greeting of "Welcome to Royal Horizon." Her tone suggested they were lost, or worse, trespassing. "Checking in for Flight 404 to Zurich," Mia said pleasantly, placing her passport on the high counter. Maya did the same. Brianna didn't take the passports. She didn't even look down at the computer screen. She just sighed, a loud, theatrical exhale through her nose. "Ladies," Brianna said, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet condescension that was far more insulting than shouting. "The economy check-in is down there. You see the sign? The one with the long line. This is for priority members and first-class passengers only. I need to keep this area clear for our actual customers." Mia felt the heat rise up her neck. "We know where we are. We are flying first class." Brianna let out a short, incredulous laugh. She looked past them to the man in the suit behind them. "Mr. Henderson, so sorry for the delay. I'll be with you in just a moment, as soon as I clear this confusion." She turned back to the twins, her smile vanishing. "Look, I don't have time for TikTok pranks or whatever this is. You're blocking the way. If you have economy tickets, go wait in line. If you're looking for the restroom, it's back toward the entrance. But move. Now." Maya's hand trembled slightly, but Mia planted her feet. "Scan the passport, Brianna," Mia said, her voice dropping an octave. She wasn't shouting, but the authority in her voice was unmistakable. Brianna blinked, taken aback by the girl's audacity to use her first name. "Excuse me?" "My name is Mia Sterling. This is Maya Sterling. We are booked on Flight 404. Seat 1A and 1B. Scan. The passport." The tension was thick enough to choke on. Mr. Henderson, the man behind them, huffed loudly. "Come on, really? Can't security handle this riffraff?" Brianna's face flushed red. Furious that her authority was being challenged in front of a VIP, she snatched Mia's passport off the counter with aggressive force. "Fine," Brianna spat. "I'll scan it, and when the system shows nothing, I'm going to have airport police escort you out for harassment." She slammed the passport onto the scanner, her fingers dancing angrily over the keyboard, preparing to deliver the bad news. The computer beeped. A green light flashed on the screen. Brianna froze. She stared at the monitor. The screen displayed clearly: passenger, Sterling, Maya. Status, Royal Emperor class. Loyalty, tier, apex. It was the highest possible status, a status that usually belonged to diplomats, A-list celebrities, and billionaires. Brianna's brain couldn't process the visual data against her personal bias. Hoodies, sneakers, black skin. It didn't compute. "There's a glitch," Brianna muttered to herself, shaking her head. This is a system error." "Is there a problem?" Maya asked softly. Brianna looked up, her eyes filled not with apology, but with suspicion. "Where did you get these tickets?" "Our father bought them," Mia said. "Your father?" Brianna repeated skeptically. She looked at the screen again. The ticket was purchased through a corporate account, Sterling Global Holdings. She didn't recognize the parent company, but she saw the price tag. $12,000 per seat. "This credit card used to book these," Brianna said, her voice turning accusatory. "Is the cardholder present?" "No," Mia said. "It's a gift." Brianna smirked. The trap was set. "I see. Well, due to a recent rise in credit card fraud involving stolen corporate accounts, I cannot issue these boarding passes without verifying the cardholder physically or having a signed authorization letter on company letterhead, notarized within the last 24 hours. Mia frowned. "That's not policy. I've flown this airline 6 times this year. That has never been policy." "It's a new policy," Brianna lied smoothly. "Implemented this morning for suspicious transactions." "Suspicious?" Mia stepped closer to the counter. "What is suspicious about us, Brianna? Say it." "We don't have time for this race-baiting nonsense," the man behind them, Mr. Henderson, barked. He stepped forward, effectively pushing Maya aside with his shoulder. "Brianna, get them out of here. I have a merger to close in Zurich, and I'm not missing the lounge access because of 2 scammers." "You heard him," Brianna said, crossing her arms. "Step aside or I call security. You are not getting on this plane." Mia's fists clenched at her sides. The sheer injustice of it was vibrating in her bones. She looked at Mr. Henderson, who was checking his Rolex, and then at Brianna, who was looking at them with a mixture of triumph and disgust. Maya pulled at Mia's sleeve. "Mia, let's just call Dad, please." "No," Mia said, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. "Dad is in a board meeting in Tokyo. It's 3 a.m. there. I am not waking him up because this woman decides she doesn't like our faces." Mia pulled out her phone. She opened the Royal Horizon app. The boarding passes were right there on the screen, QR codes valid and ready. "We have mobile passes," Mia said, holding the phone up. "We don't need you to print anything. We're going to security." She grabbed her bag and turned to leave. "Security!" Brianna screamed. Her voice echoed through the terminal, stopping the bustle of the crowd. 2 large TSA officers and a private security contractor for the airline, a man named Officer Miller, no relation to Brianna but equally tired of his job, jogged over. "What's the problem here, Brianna?" Officer Miller asked, his hand resting near his belt. "These 2 individuals are attempting to breach the security checkpoint with fraudulent tickets," Brianna declared, pointing a manicured finger at the twins. "I denied their check-in due to suspected credit card theft, and they became aggressive. They threatened me and tried to force their way past the counter." "That is a lie!" Maya cried out, her calmness finally breaking. "We didn't threaten anyone. She refused to help us." Officer Miller looked at the twins. He saw the hoodies. He saw the distress. Then he looked at Brianna, the uniformed gate agent, and Mr. Henderson, the wealthy-looking witness, nodding along. Bias works fast. It creates a narrative before a single fact is checked. "Ladies," Officer Miller said, stepping into their personal space, "I'm going to need you to step away from the priority line." "We have tickets," Mia shouted, holding up her phone. "Scan the code, just scan it." Officer Miller snatched the phone from Mia's hand. "Hey, give that back!" Mia lunged forward instinctively to grab her property. "Back up!" The officer shoved Mia hard in the chest. She stumbled back, tripping over her own duffel bag and falling onto the hard terrazzo floor. A gasp rippled through the crowd. People in the economy line were watching now. Some had their phones out, recording. Maya screamed, dropping to her knees beside her sister. "Don't touch her! What is wrong with you?" "You are creating a disturbance in a federal facility," Officer Miller boomed. "That is grounds for detainment." Brianna leaned over the counter, a smug smile playing on her lips. "I told you. Fraud. They always get violent when they get caught." Mr. Henderson stepped up to the counter, placing his platinum card down. "Excellent handling of the situation, Brianna. Truly. I'll be writing a commendation letter to corporate about you. Keeping the riffraff out keeps the airline safe." Mia sat on the floor, humiliation burning her cheeks. She wasn't hurt physically, but the emotional blow was staggering. She looked up and saw the rows of eyes staring at her. Judgment, pity, amusement. She took a deep breath. She stood up, helping Maya up with her. She dusted off her sweatpants. "Okay," Maya said. Her voice was deadly calm now. The hot rage had cooled into something solid and heavy like iron. "Okay, you want to play it this way." "You're leaving," Officer Miller said, pointing to the exit doors. "If you try to go through security, you will be arrested." "We're not leaving," Mia said. She held out her hand to the officer. "Give me my phone." "You're not calling your dealer or your boyfriend to come cause trouble," the officer sneered. "I'm not," Mia said. "I'm calling the owner of this airline." Brianna laughed. It was a loud, cackling sound. Oh, honey, the owner? You think you can just call the CEO? You're delusional. Go home. Give me the phone. Mia's eyes locked onto Officer Miller's. There was something in her gaze, a terrifying certainty, that made him hesitate. He handed the phone back, smirking. Go ahead, make your call. Let's see who shows up. Mia took the phone. Her fingers didn't tremble this time. She didn't call the customer service line. She didn't call a lawyer. She opened her contacts and scrolled to a contact saved simply as the big boss. She hit FaceTime. The crowd watched in silence. Brianna rolled her eyes and started checking Mr. Henderson in, ignoring the girl holding the phone up. The phone rang once, twice. Then the screen connected. The image was crisp. A man appeared on the screen. He was sitting in the back of a Maybach, wearing a suit that cost more than Brianna's annual salary. He had salt and pepper hair and a face that had graced the cover of Forbes and Fortune magazine 3 times in the last decade. It was Mason Sterling, not just a wealthy man. He was the founder of Sterling Global Holdings, the private equity firm that had acquired a 51% controlling stake in Royal Horizon Airlines 6 months ago. Mia. Mason Sterling's deep voice boomed from the phone speaker. He looked concerned. Princess, why are you calling? You should be in the lounge by now. Is everything okay? Mia turned the phone around. She didn't say a word. She just panned the camera. She showed her sister, Maya, wiping tears from her eyes. She showed the dusty floor where she had been shoved. She showed Officer Miller, whose smirk was starting to falter. And finally, she zoomed in on Brianna's face. Brianna looked at the screen. She squinted. Then all the blood drained from her face. She recognized him. His portrait hung in the break room. It was on the front page of the company newsletter, sitting on the counter right next to her hand. Dad, Mia said, her voice breaking slightly. We're at JFK. They denied our boarding. They said we're frauds. And this man just shoved me to the floor. On the screen, Mason Sterling's face went from confused to a look of pure, apocalyptic fury. Who? Mason asked. The word was quiet, but it carried the weight of a thunderclap. Who touched you? The police and the gate agent, Brianna Miller. She tore up our status, Dad. She said we stole the tickets. There was a pause, a silence so heavy that the entire terminal seemed to hold its breath. Put me on speaker, Mason said, and hold the phone up to that woman's face. Mia stepped forward. Officer Miller tried to block her, but he saw the face on the screen and stepped back, confused and suddenly terrified. Mia held the phone inches from Brianna's terrified face. Hello, Brianna, Mason Sterling said. His voice was crystal clear. Mr. Sterling, Brianna stammered. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped Mr. Henderson's passport. I am currently looking at the flight manifest for Flight 404, Mason said. I see my daughters listed in seats 1A and 1B. Tell me, Brianna, why are my children crying in the middle of my terminal? Sir, there was a mistake. They didn't look like... the policy. Brianna was hyperventilating. The policy, Mason repeated. Brianna, listen to me very carefully. Do not let Flight 404 leave the gate. Sir, the flight is boarding. The pilot has a schedule. I don't care if the Pope is on that plane, Mason roared. You tell the pilot to kill the engines. Nobody boards. Nobody leaves. I am currently landing at Teterboro Private Airport. I will be there in 20 minutes. If that plane moves 1 inch, Brianna, I will personally ensure you never work in any industry again. Do you understand me? Yes, sir, Brianna whispered. And Brianna? Yes. Pray. The call disconnected. The silence that followed the disconnection of the call was heavy, suffocating, and absolute. It was the kind of silence usually reserved for the moments after a car crash. Brianna stood frozen behind the podium, her hand still hovering over the intercom button. Her face was a mask of pale terror. The glitch she had so confidently dismissed was now rushing toward the airport in a motorcade, and she was the one standing on the tracks. "Well?" Maya asked. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. She simply crossed her arms, the vintage canvas backpack now looking like a shield of armor. "You heard him. Stop the plane." Brianna swallowed hard, her throat clicking audibly. She picked up the phone that connected directly to the jet bridge and the cockpit. Her hands shook so violently she had to use 2 hands to hold the receiver. "Captain," Brianna whispered, her voice cracking. "Captain, this is the gate. You need to kill the engines." A crackle of static, then a confused male voice boomed through the receiver, loud enough for the front row of passengers to hear. "Repeat that, Gate. We are 5 minutes from pushback. Pre-flight checks are complete." "I said cut the engines!" Brianna screeched, panic finally taking over. "Do not push back! Shut it down! Shut everything down! We have a situation." "What kind of situation? Security? Mechanical?" "Management!" Brianna squeaked. "Executive management order. Just do it!" She slammed the phone down. Behind her, the line of first-class passengers was beginning to murmur. Confusion was morphing into agitation, and leading the charge, predictably, was Mr. Henderson. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Henderson shouted, stepping around the stunned Officer Miller. He slammed his hand on the counter, making Brianna flinch. "You're going to ground a transatlantic flight because of a phone call? From some daddy? Do you know who I am?" Brianna looked at him, her eyes wide and glassy. She looked like an animal caught in a trap, chewing its own leg off. "Sir, please, just wait." "I will not wait," Henderson roared. He turned to the crowd, gesturing wildly at Mia and Maya. "Look at this. 2 entitled brats throw a tantrum because they got caught trying to scam the system, and now hundreds of us have to suffer. It's affirmative action gone wrong. That's what it is." A few people in the crowd grumbled in agreement. The bias ran deep. To them, the visual of 2 young black women in hoodies shutting down an airport terminal didn't look like justice. It looked like chaos. Maya stepped forward. The tears were gone. In their place was the steel spine she had inherited from her father. "Mr. Henderson, was it?" Maya asked. Henderson sneered at her. "Don't speak to me." "You might want to check your email," Maya said calmly. "What?" "My father is Mason Sterling," Maya said. "Sterling Global Holdings. You mentioned you were flying to Zurich for a merger. Who is the merger with?" Henderson froze. He blinked. That's private business." "It's with Helix Capital," Maya said, reciting the name she had seen on the file folder sticking out of his briefcase earlier. "My father's firm is the majority underwriter for Helix. If you don't sit down and shut your mouth, the only thing you'll be merging with in Zurich is a termination letter." Henderson's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The color drained from his face, matching Brianna's. He stepped back, clutching his briefcase, and retreated into the crowd without another word. Suddenly, the doors to the terminal office burst open. A man in a slightly ill-fitting suit, sweating profusely, came running down the concourse. It was David Clark, the station manager. He had clearly been alerted by the sudden red flags popping up on the flight operations board. "What is going on?" David panted, arriving at the gate. "Why is Flight 404 red-flagged? Why are the engines off?" Brianna looked at her boss, tears finally spilling over. "David, I made a mistake." David looked at Brianna, then at the twins, then at the security guard who was still awkwardly holding Mia's phone. "What mistake?" David demanded. "She denied us boarding," Maya said softly. "She said our tickets were fraudulent because we're black, and then she had that officer shove my sister to the ground." David Clark looked at the twins. He recognized the family resemblance immediately. He had been at the company retreat last year. He had seen the photos on Mason Sterling's desk. His knees nearly buckled. "Miss Sterling," David gasped. He rushed around the counter, practically bowing. I'm horrified. This is a misunderstanding. A terrible, terrible misunderstanding. Please let me escort you to the VIP lounge. I can upgrade you to the suites. We can fix this." "We aren't going to the lounge, David," Maya said. "And we aren't getting on the plane." "We're waiting for Dad," Maya added. David Clark looked at his watch. He looked at the grounded plane. He looked at the angry crowd. He realized that his career and the careers of everyone standing in a 20-foot radius were hanging by a thread. "Clear the area," David shouted at the staff. "Close the gate. Nobody gets on. Get these passengers some water. Fix this." But it was too late to fix it. The glass doors of the terminal entrance were already sliding open. The atmosphere in Terminal 4 changed instantly. It wasn't just a shift in mood, it was a shift in gravity. Through the automatic doors walked 4 men. Leading them was Mason Sterling. He wasn't running. He wasn't shouting. He was walking with a terrifying, predatory grace. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin. His face was a mask of stone, unreadable and cold, but his eyes were burning with a fire that could incinerate the building. Flanking him were 2 men in dark suits, his personal security detail, massive and silent. Trailing slightly behind was a man in a sharp navy suit carrying a briefcase, Alexander Thorne, the ruthless head of legal for Sterling Global. The crowd parted. It wasn't a polite parting, it was a recoil. People sensed power, and they moved out of its way. Mason didn't look at the plane. He didn't look at the crowd. He walked straight to his daughters. "Mia, Maya." His voice was soft, a stark contrast to his presence. "Daddy," Maya whispered. She finally let go of the tension, stepping forward and burying her face in his chest. Mason wrapped one arm around her, his hand cupping the back of her head protectively. He looked at Mia. He saw the dust on her sweatpants. He saw the slight scrape on her hand where she had hit the floor. He gently pulled Mia in, holding both of them for a long moment. The terminal was silent. Even the angry passengers watched, captivated by the raw emotion of the scene. Then Mason released them. He turned around. The softness vanished. The father was gone. The CEO was here. He looked at David Clark, the station manager, who was trembling. He looked at Brianna, who was sobbing silently into her hands. He looked at Officer Miller, who was standing at attention, trying to look professional, but failing miserably. "Who put their hands on my daughter?" Mason asked. His voice was not loud, but it carried to the back of the line. Mia pointed a shaking finger at Officer Miller. "Him. He shoved me. I fell." Mason turned his gaze to Officer Miller. He took 2 slow steps toward him. Miller was a big man, but he seemed to shrink under Mason's stare. "Mr. Sterling, sir," Miller stammered. "I was following protocol. They were agitated. I deemed them a threat to—" "A threat?" Mason cut him off. 2 unarmed young women asking for their valid tickets to be scanned are a threat? You shoved a 22-year-old girl to the ground because you were too lazy to do your job and verify a ticket? I was told it was fraud, Miller said, pointing a finger at Brianna. She told me. Ah, Mason said. He turned to Brianna. Brianna couldn't even speak. She just shook her head, her mouth opening and closing. Mason walked up to the podium. He placed his hands on the counter, leaning in close. Brianna Miller, Mason read from her name tag. Employee number 49201. 10 years with the airline. 2 commendations for on-time departures. 3 complaints for rudeness that were dismissed by HR. Brianna's eyes widened. How? How do you know that? Because I own the servers that store your file, Mason said. And while I was in the car, I had my team pull the security footage from the last hour. I watched it on my phone. A gasp went through the crowd. I watched you, Mason continued, his voice rising slightly, vibrating with controlled anger. I watched my daughters approach you politely. I watched you sneer at them. I watched you refuse to look at their documents. I watched you judge them based on their clothes and their skin color and decide that they didn't belong in your world. It wasn't. I didn't mean, Brianna sobbed. And then, Mason said, leaning closer, I watched you lie. You told this officer they were violent. You weaponized him against them. You wanted them hurt. You wanted them humiliated. No, Brianna cried. I just wanted them to leave the line. Why? Mason asked. Because they didn't look like first-class passengers to you. Brianna didn't answer. She couldn't. The truth was hanging in the air, ugly and undeniable. Mason stood up straight. He adjusted his cuffs. Alexander, Mason said, not looking back at his lawyer. Yes, sir. Alexander Thorne stepped forward, opening his briefcase. The plane, Mason said. Grounded indefinitely, sir, Alexander said. We've cancelled the flight manifest. The aircraft is being pulled for a mandatory executive inspection. And the passengers? We have arranged for a partner airline to take them. They will board in Terminal 2 in 3 hours. They will all receive full refunds and a $1,000 travel voucher for the inconvenience, the crowd murmured. Refunds? Vouchers? The anger at the delay suddenly evaporated, replaced by awe at the man's resources. Except, Mason said, raising a hand, except for Mr. Henderson. Mason turned and scanned the crowd. He found the man in the Italian suit trying to hide behind a family of tourists. Mr. Henderson, Mason called out. Step forward. Henderson didn't move. Security, Mason barked. 2 of his personal guards moved into the crowd and escorted Henderson to the front. He looked terrified. You encouraged this, Mason said, looking down at him. I heard the audio. Riff-raff. Is that what you called my children? I was stressed. It was a joke, Henderson stammered. Alexander, revoke his status, Mason said. Done, Alexander said, tapping on his tablet. Lifetime ban from Royal Horizon and all partner alliances. And regarding the merger with Helix Capital? Call the CEO of Helix, Mason said. Tell him I'm pulling the funding. Tell him why. Tell him I don't do business with men who abuse women in airport terminals. No, Henderson screamed. You can't do that. That's a $50 million deal. You'll ruin me. You ruined yourself, Mason said coldly. Get him out of my terminal. The security guards dragged the protesting Henderson away. Now, it was just Brianna and Officer Miller left. The crowd was silent, recording every second on their phones. This was better than a movie. This was justice. Now, Mason said, turning back to Brianna. Firing you would be too easy, Brianna. You just go to another airline. You do this to someone else's daughter. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm going to make sure the world knows exactly who you are. Mason motioned to Alexander Thorne. The lawyer stepped forward, holding a tablet. He tapped the screen, and suddenly, the large monitors behind the check-in counter, usually reserved for flight times and weather updates, flickered. The screen went black, then replaced the Royal Horizon logo with a grainy, high-angle video feed. It was the security footage from 20 minutes ago. The entire terminal watched in stunned silence. On the giant screen, Everyone saw Mia and Maya approach the counter. They saw them stand patiently. They saw Brianna ignore them to fawn over Mr. Henderson. They saw Brianna sneer, roll her eyes, and refuse to scan the passports. And most damning of all, they saw the moment Officer Miller shoved Mia. On the big screen, the violence of the shove looked even worse. Mia flew back, her head snapping, before hitting the floor. "This," Mason said, his voice echoing through the quiet terminal, "is assault. And this," he pointed to Brianna on the screen, "is discrimination." Brianna was shaking so hard she had to grip the counter to stay upright. I was just following procedure." "No," Mason cut in sharply. "You were following your prejudice. And now you're going to follow the consequences." Mason turned to the crowd. He saw phones held high, recording every second. He knew this was already trending on Twitter and TikTok. "Brianna Miller," Mason announced, "effective immediately. Your employment with Royal Horizon is terminated for cause. You will lose your pension. You will lose your benefits. And because your actions caused the grounding of a commercial aircraft, a financial loss of approximately $200,000, my legal team will be filing a civil suit against you personally for damages." Brianna gasped, her knees buckling. You can't do that. I can't pay that. I have a mortgage." "You should have thought about your mortgage before you denied my daughters their rights," Mason said coldly. "But I'm not done." He turned to Officer Miller. The large man was sweating bullets, his eyes darting around for an exit. "Officer," Mason said, "you are a contractor, correct? Private security." "Yes, sir," Miller gulped. "Assaulting a passenger is a felony," Mason said. "Assaulting a passenger who offered no resistance is a career-ending move. I have already sent this footage to the district attorney. The airport police are on their way to take your statement. And by statement, I mean your booking photo." As if on cue, 3 uniformed Port Authority police officers arrived at the gate. They didn't look at Mason. They went straight for Miller. "Turn around, hands behind your back," one officer said, pulling out handcuffs. "I was doing my job," Miller shouted as he was cuffed. "She was resisting." "The video says otherwise," the officer replied, tightening the cuffs. As Miller was led away, engaging in the walk of shame past the very passengers he had tried to intimidate, a smattering of applause broke out. Then it grew louder. People were clapping, not just for the show, but for the vindication. Mason turned back to Brianna. She was alone now. No security to back her up. No rich VIP to validate her. Just a woman in a uniform that no longer meant anything. "Please," Brianna whispered, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "Mr. Sterling, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll apologize to them. I'll do anything. Don't ruin my life." Mason looked at her. For a second, his face softened. He looked like he might show mercy. He walked over to Mia and Maya. He put his hands on their shoulders. "Do you accept her apology?" Mason asked his daughters. Mia looked at Brianna. She remembered the coldness in Brianna's eyes just moments ago. She remembered the humiliation. "I accept that you're sorry you got caught," Mia said, her voice strong. "But I don't accept that you're sorry for what you did. If my dad wasn't Mason Sterling, if I was just a regular girl, you would have let me sit in jail tonight. You wouldn't have cared." Mia turned to her father. "Let's go, Dad." Mason nodded. He looked back at Brianna one last time. "You heard her," Mason said. "Alexander, handle the rest." Alexander Thorne stepped up to Brianna, handing her a thick envelope. "This is a notice of litigation. You are banned from entering any Sterling Global property. That includes this airport terminal, which we manage. Security will escort you to the curb." 2 new security guards appeared. They took Brianna by the arms, gently, but firmly, and led her away from her post. She was sobbing loudly, a wail of regret that echoed off the high ceilings. Mason didn't watch her leave. He was already focused on his girls. "Come on," he said, guiding them toward the exit. "The jet is waiting at Teterboro. We're going to Zurich, and I think we need some new luggage." As they walked out, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. But this time there was no judgment in their eyes. There was only respect. The ride to the private airfield was quiet. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a heavy exhaustion. Mia stared out the window of the SUV, watching the New York skyline blur past. Maya was scrolling on her phone. "Mia," Maya whispered. "Look." She held up the screen. A video titled, "Racist Karen Gets Owned by Billionaire Dad at JFK" had been posted 10 minutes ago. It already had 1.5 million views. The comments were scrolling so fast they were a blur. "The way he shut down the terminal. Boss move." Does anyone know who the girls are? They handled that with so much grace. "Brianna needs to go to jail. Period." "Mr. Henderson. Is that the guy from Helix Capital? Twitter do your thing." Mia sighed, pushing the phone away. "I didn't want to be famous, Maya. I just wanted to go on vacation." Mason turned from the front seat. "I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry. I tried to keep you out of the spotlight all these years. But sometimes the world forces you into it." He reached back and squeezed Mia's hand. "You did the right thing. You stood your ground. You didn't get violent. You didn't scream. You were dignified. That's why you won." They arrived at Teterboro. The Sterling private jet, a Gulfstream G650, was waiting on the tarmac, its engines humming softly. It was a world away from the chaos of Terminal 4. As they boarded, the flight attendant handed them warm towels and glasses of sparkling cider. They sank into the plush leather seats. But the story wasn't over. The karma was still working its way through the system. While the Sterling family was in the air, crossing the Atlantic in luxury, the world below was exacting its price. By the time Mr. Henderson got into his Uber outside JFK, since he was banned from the airline and couldn't fly, his phone was blowing up. The hashtag #ShotBoycottHelix was trending #1 worldwide. The video of him calling the twins riffraff and demanding they be removed had been isolated and shared by major news outlets. He received a call from the chairman of the board at Helix Capital. "Don't bother coming into the office on Monday, Robert," the chairman said. The voice was icy. "Sir, it's a misunderstanding. I was stressed," Henderson pleaded. "You just cost us the Sterling underwriting," the chairman said. "Do you know how much money that is? That's half our portfolio." Mason Sterling just pulled the plug. He sent a memo to every bank on Wall Street, advising them that Helix Capital is a high-risk partner due to unstable leadership. "We are ruined, Robert. You are fired, and our lawyers are looking into suing you for breach of fiduciary duty." The line went dead. Robert Henderson sat in the back of a Prius, staring at his reflection in the dark window. He was a millionaire an hour ago. Now he was a pariah. Brianna didn't go home. She sat in her car in the employee parking lot, unable to turn the key. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. People she hadn't spoken to in high school were messaging her. Strangers were finding her Facebook profile. The internet detectives had found everything: her address, her church, her husband's workplace. She had become the face of intolerance. She realized with a sinking feeling that Mason was right. She wouldn't get another job, not at an airline, not at a hotel, not anywhere that required a background check or a Google search. She had wielded her small amount of power like a tyrant, enjoying the feeling of making someone else feel small. Now, the universe had returned the energy tenfold. She was the smallest person in the world. On the jet, the mood had lightened. Mia and Maya were eating dinner, lobster thermidor and truffle fries, laughing as Mason told stories about his early days in business. "Dad?" Mia asked, pausing with a fork halfway to her mouth. "Did you really buy the airline just to fire Brianna?" Mason chuckled, swirling his drink. "No. I bought the controlling stake 6 months ago because it was a good investment. But let's just say I'm very hands-on with my investments." He looked at his daughters, his expression turning serious again. "Listen to me. The world can be a cruel place. People will judge you. They will try to stop you. They will try to make you feel like you don't belong in the first-class line. But never ever let them convince you that you belong in the back. You belong wherever you want to be. And if they close the door—" "You buy the building?" Maya joked. "Exactly," Mason smiled. "Or you kick the door down. Today we did a bit of both." Mia looked out the window at the stars. She felt lighter. The shame of the incident had washed away, replaced by a sense of power. She realized that her father's money was a tool, yes, but her own dignity was the weapon. "To Zurich," Mia said, raising her glass. "To Zurich," Mason and Maya replied. But as they clinked glasses, Mason's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it. It was a text from Alexander Thorne. "Sir, we have a problem. The police report from Officer Miller. He's talking. He claims he wasn't acting alone. He claims he was given specific instructions to target the twins by someone else." Mason frowned. He picked up the phone. "Who?" he typed back. The 3 dots of the typing bubble appeared. Then the answer came. "Someone we didn't expect. This wasn't random, Mason. This was a setup." Mason stared at the screen. The blood in his veins turned to ice. He thought it was just a racist gate agent and a power-tripping cop. But if this was a setup, if someone had targeted his daughters specifically, then the war wasn't over. It had just begun. The atmosphere in the cabin of the Gulfstream G650 shifted from celebratory to chilling in the span of a single text message. Mason stared at the phone. His thumb hovered over the screen. He looked up at his daughters, who were laughing at a movie on the monitor, oblivious to the new storm brewing. He stood up, buttoned his suit jacket, and walked to the back of the plane where the satellite phone was mounted. He dialed Alexander Thorne. "Explain," Mason said. No greeting. Just a command. "It's Miller, sir." Alexander's voice came through, tinny but clear. The police started squeezing him about the assault charge. They told him he was looking at 5 years for felony assault because of the video evidence. He cracked. He's looking for a plea deal. "What did he say?" Mason asked, his voice low. "He said he received a cash payment of $10,000 2 days ago. He was given a photo of Mia and Maya. He was told that they would be flying out today. His instructions were to provoke an incident. He was told to make sure they didn't get on the plane and to make sure it got ugly." Mason gripped the phone handset so tight the plastic groaned. "Why? To what end?" "To hurt the stock price, Mason," Alexander said. "Think about it. If the headline was Sterling twins arrested for drug smuggling or Sterling daughters in airport brawl, the stock for Royal Horizon would have dipped. It would have cast doubt on your leadership. It would have made you look like a distracted father with out-of-control kids." "Who paid him?" Mason asked. The name was already forming in his mind. "It was traced back to a shell company owned by Silas Vance," Alexander said. "Silas Vance, the vice chairman of the Royal Horizon Board. The man who had opposed Mason's takeover from day one. The man who wanted the CEO chair for himself. He had tried to use Mason's own children as pawns to orchestrate a coup." Mason closed his eyes. He took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of leather and jet fuel. "Alexander," Mason said, Is the market still open in New York? For another 20 minutes, sir. Execute Order 66, Mason said. Sir? Alexander sounded shocked. That's the nuclear option. You'll liquidate his assets. It will destroy him completely. He targeted my family, Mason whispered. He paid a man to put his hands on my daughter. I want him destitute. I want him to lose his board seat, his stock options, his house in the Hamptons, and his dignity. I want the SEC to audit him back to kindergarten. And when you're done with his money, hand the evidence of the bribe over to the FBI. Conspiracy to commit assault. Make sure he spends the next decade in a cell next to Miller. Understood, Alexander said. It's done. Mason hung up. He smoothed his tie. The rage was still there, but it was cold now. Controlled. He had just destroyed a man's life from 40,000 feet, and he hadn't even raised his voice. He walked back to his daughters. Everything okay, Dad? Maya asked, looking up. Mason smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. The threat was neutralized. The wolves had been hunted down. Everything is perfect, Mason said. Just wrapping up some loose ends. Now who wants to see the itinerary for Zurich? I added a stop at a chocolate factory. The fallout from the JFK incident was not just a news cycle, it was a cultural shift. Brianna Miller. The lawsuit from Sterling Global was dropped on one condition. Brianna had to complete 500 hours of community service in an inner-city youth center. It was there, working with kids she had previously looked down upon, that Brianna's world-view actually shattered. She didn't get her job back. She currently works as a receptionist at a dental office, earning a fraction of her old salary. She keeps her head down. She never judges anyone by their clothes anymore. The internet never fully forgot. But she is slowly learning to be a better human. The hard way. Robert Henderson. The former executive of Helix Capital lost everything. His breach of fiduciary duty lawsuit bankrupted him. His wife left him, taking the house. He was last seen managing a car rental kiosk at a minor airport in New Jersey. Every time he sees a black customer, he breaks out in a cold sweat, terrified of making a mistake. He is the politest employee they have. Silas Vance. The mastermind didn't fare as well as the pawns. The FBI raid on his home was televised. He was charged with conspiracy, bribery, and corporate espionage. He is currently serving an 8-year sentence in a federal penitentiary. His board seat at Royal Horizon was given to a new member, Mia Sterling, who became the youngest board member in the company's history. The twins. Mia and Maya didn't just go to Zurich. They had the trip of a lifetime. But when they came back, they didn't go back to the shadows. They launched a YouTube channel called The First Class Line. They travel the world, reviewing airlines, hotels, and restaurants. But their mission is specific. They highlight businesses that treat everyone with dignity, regardless of race or appearance. They expose the bias, and they celebrate the inclusion. Their first video? A review of Royal Horizon Airlines, featuring a very special interview with the new CEO, Mason Sterling, about the company's new zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. The final shot of their latest video shows Mia and Maya standing at JFK Terminal 4, right where it all happened. They tried to tell us we didn't belong, Mia says to the camera, smiling. So we bought the building, Maya finishes, winking. They turn and walk through the priority lane. This time, the gate agent, a young woman with a bright smile, scans their phones immediately. Welcome back, Miss Sterling. Miss Sterling, right this way. The sisters walk down the jet bridge, heads held high, invisible crowns firmly in place. And that is how the Sterling twins turned a moment of humiliation into a movement of power. They proved that while money can buy a first-class ticket, true class comes from how you treat people, And true power comes from standing your ground when the world tries to push you down. Brianna, Henderson, and Vance learned the hard way that when you judge a book by its cover, you might just get hit with the whole library. What would you have done if you were in Mia's shoes? Would you have waited for the police or called the CEO? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next crazy story. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind or be careful.